Hi there, it's Christy with the Chirp YouTube channel. Today I'm here to do the second video in my series on developing particular skills through play. And the skill that I'm going to discuss today is engagement. Most families don't really think about this skill because in most typically developing kids it happens so naturally that we don't really have to do anything to encourage it. But if your child happens to have some delays or a disorder where things are developing in an order that is not typical, then working on this skill can be extremely helpful for you, because without this, we can't really learn. Without being engaged in the world around us, we don't learn new skills. So we're going to talk about that today. So if that's something that interests you, stick around. You're going to have a great time watching this video. I can guarantee it. I do have notes today, so I don't get off track, and so that I make sure to mention all the salient details about this topic. So don't be distracted by my crunchy little notes down there. So engagement is a curious and interested involvement with the world. It's a desire to interact. So if you think about a typical child, everything is interesting because everything is very new. To a child who has sensory integration difficulties or who has a social disorder, different and novel is not good, it's bad. It's considered to be a threat. And so what we want to do is we want to convince these children that people are fun. So I'm going to give you hints today on how to help your child become engaged in the world and engaged in interactions with people through fun activities that will be meaningful to her. This is how we're going to define play for the term for this particular video. There are lots of different types of play, and I'll be doing a whole video soon on the different types of play and how to encourage your child's development through each one. But for this, we're just going to call play anything that your child does that she considers fun. Lack of engagement is a lot of times the first sign of some sort of a developmental disorder. So it's really important to pay attention to this. And if your child is not engaged with the world, if your child's not engaged with you, then I highly recommend getting some sort of an assessment to make sure that you're supporting her development in all areas that you can. I'm going to list some resources down below to help you find appropriate professionals who can help you in this area. You might want to start with a communication assessment, because that's where a lot of these problems show up. Obviously, engagement is a difficulty with communication. Okay, turning page. Very exciting moment there on this video channel. Okay, I want to give you a couple examples of what a lack of engagement might look like, so you can see in which areas your child might not be engaged. This might be a child who seems really internally focused on highly preferred activities in a way that shuts other people out. And sometimes we think of a child who is internally focused or focused on only particular activities as being engaged because they're interested in because she is interested in what she is doing. That is not engagement. That is hyper-focused behavior, and that actually is a negative thing when we're talking about development, because if her attention cannot be easily shifted, that's a problem, because she cannot shift from, let's say, a car that she's spinning the wheels on. If she can't shift from that to what's going on in her environment, then she's not going to be easily able to learn from her environment because she's overly focused on this one thing. So that is one of the same problems that you'll find with engagement across all children, is that we don't learn from what we're not engaged with. If we have to learn our skills that way. We learn social skills, we learn how to use our brains, we learn language skills, we learn them all by being engaged with the world. And if we're hyper-focused on something that is not that is not helpful for learning. You might also think of an unengaged child as someone who might not notice or respond when the doorbell rings or when her brother calls her name. This child might just wander off from activities such as dinner, where everyone else kind of knows that you sit until you're done or until everyone is finished. This child might just kind of wander. Maybe throughout the day, she just kind of wanders. This child doesn't watch other people or look intently at people. It's more of a, if she looks at you, it's probably out of the corner of her eye or up from under her eyelashes or something like that. It's not really a direct perception sort of look. This child doesn't really appear to be interested in the world outside of very specific and particular, highly motivating items or activities. And not interested in people unless those people can provide access to those highly motivating items or activities. You can see why this would be a roadblock to learning. If a child's not engaged in the world around her, she can't learn from what's taking place, as I mentioned just a minute ago. If she doesn't attend to her brother talking about school, she doesn't learn how to use language at a higher level. She doesn't learn the back and forth flow of communication between you and your son as you discuss his day at school. She doesn't learn about school. She doesn't know what to expect because she didn't attend to the discussion around her that was happening about school. And she won't be learning how to share narratives, which is sequencing a story. So if your son comes home and says, "Today I fell down on the playground and my friend Jeremy helped me up," your daughter isn't going to be learning how to sequence a story appropriately, and that's a really important skill to have. So think of it this way. Our brains don't learn from what we're not engaged in. If you are at a conference, a training of some kind, and you are reading a book, and it's a really interesting book, like a spy novel or something like that, and there is the speaker up front talking away, but you are so absorbed in your spy novel that you barely even hear what the speaker is saying. Are you learning from that speaker? No, you're not. Think instead of a speaker who is very engaging and who is fascinating and who you can barely stop listening to because you're so excited about what she's saying. Well, are you going to learn from that speaker? Yes, you are, because the learning portions of your brain are all lit up because you're so engaged in what she's saying. That's what we're talking about here, and that's what we want to activate for your child as well. We want to activate engagement so that learning can take place. I'm going to base a lot of the following information on my favorite developmental model, which is the DIR Floortime Model. And I've talked about this in a previous video as well. I'm not going to go into it much today because I don't want to make this video an hour long, but I'm going to put the links down below. So if you want to learn more about that model and why I like it, then you can click down there. There's a little bit more about the DIR floor model in a previous video that I did, and I'll link to that right here so you can discover a little bit more about that. That video is on early communication development, and so that might be helpful to you also. So step number one in helping your child engage better with the world is watch and find out which activities and items are extremely pleasurable for your child. So usually at this level, it's things that benefit her sensory system. And I'm going to put another link right here to the video that I did on sensory integration. And that will help you a little bit in figuring out what's pleasurable for your child and what is maybe off-putting for your child's sensory system. So watch her as she does things about her day, and what does she do a lot of, or what brings a smile to her face maybe. A lot of times if kids are not engaged with the world, they don't do a lot of facial expressions because they haven't learned yet that that is something that other people do in response to what's happening to them, or in order to communicate their feelings from the inside out. But for example, I'm thinking of one particular child I'm going to call Sally. And she was the child that I worked a lot with on engagement because she was very inward focused. She had very specific activities that had to happen certain ways or she was frustrated. And so, of course, we worked through this developmental continuum, and we started with self-regulation. So I did all the things that I recommended in the previous video in this playlist, which was self-regulation through play. And then when she was able to stay regulated, we moved on to this step, which is engagement with the world around her. And the very first thing that I did was to watch her and see what is it that she really likes. And once I had a good list of those activities and how she preferred them done, then I could get involved. So we're going to say that Sally likes playing in the sink after washing her hands. So every time she goes potty, she likes to leave the water on a little bit extra and play in the foam in the sink, which is a pretty enjoyable experience. She likes watching herself in the mirror, usually out of the corner of her eye. She likes to do a little dance. She likes to rock back and forth or side to side and watch herself in the mirror. She likes to watch the names scroll by at the end of a movie. She is interested a little bit in the movie, but she loves watching the names scroll by, especially up really close. She likes imitating Angelina Ballerina, the little mouse who's a ballerina, when a certain song comes on. And it's some classical song, and I don't remember which one, but she puts her arms up and she does little turns and she pretends to be a ballerina. So these things may seem a little bit like meaningless activities to us sometimes, but they're very meaningful for your child. We don't have to understand why, we just have to observe it and use it. We're mining our children to figure out what is it that makes them tick. So as Dr. Stanley Greenspan, he's the inventor, I guess, of the DIR Floortime model that I talk a lot about, along with Dr. Serena Wieder. He said, assume that whatever your child is doing is bringing him some pleasure, and then see if you can deepen and widen that pleasure and make it part of a human relationship. So playing in the sink is not a relationship. Rocking in the mirror is not a relationship. None of those things is interaction. None of it is social. But your job is going to be to make it social, and my job is to help you with that. So number 2 is brainstorm ways you can get involved in her preferred activities. So deepen and widen the pleasure and make it part of a human relationship. So you're thinking through, how can I get involved with that sink? That's a little confusing. So I'm going to give you some examples. But first, I want to talk a little bit more about that. You're going to make her preferred activities a little more complicated. So it's not just leave the water on and play in the foam, not quite. And then you're going to entice the child to join you. This is not directive. You're not giving her commands and commanding her to obey. You're doing something fun, and because it's so fun, she wants to join you. That's important. Use activities with lots of excitement to draw her out of her internal focus into our world. And be fun and exciting and vibrant, sometimes a little loud, sometimes a little shocking or surprising. But she will attend and be engaged more because you are more exciting. So you might try using strange voices like high pitch or low pitch or growl. Or you may make up songs, a little melody like playing, playing, playing in the soap. And movement, you might have a certain thing you do every time that you sing the silly song. And obviously gestures, raise your eyebrows, change your pitch a lot, because just hearing a monotone is very difficult for students to attend to. So experiment with which one of these ideas works really well and can pull your child in when she's sort of wandering off. So let's talk about these particular things that this one child likes to do, and then maybe you can make some tweaks to those ideas and use them with your own child. So let's talk about the sink. So while washing her hands after she uses the potty, leave the sink on for a little bit and play in the water with her. Maybe put some extra soap and say squirt, squirt. Have her help you with the squirt, or say squirt, and then it's her turn. And maybe you sing that silly song about playing in the soap. And maybe you make soap sounds and bubbles. Maybe you label all the things that are happening. Or maybe you just splash in the sink and make it fun. Either way, this can be an interaction because you're doing it together. The goal is that she would look at you sometimes, that she would look at you and look at the soap and look back at you. That is a statement. This is fun, even if she's not talking yet. And what about the mirror? She likes looking at herself dancing in the mirror. Well, what about putting a blanket over the mirror? Hang up the blanket over the mirror, and she's going to get a little frustrated maybe, but you keep your excited face, not a frustrated face or a sad face, and say 3, 2, 1, pull! And you pull the blanket off the mirror, and then you give her your hands if she's willing to take them, and you do a little dance in front of the mirror for a minute or two, very excited little dance, and then you put the blanket back and you play the game again. And you play that game as many times as your child will play that game with you, as much time as you have. Of course, I realize you probably need to cook dinner and all the things that you do as a family member, but play that game as many times as you can. The more times you play it, the more engaging your child will find you, the more comfortable your child will be with engagement, and the more she will realize that it's fun to play with people. People are cool. I like people. And that is not what her internal body is telling her, but we can convince her of that. We can convince her brain of that, and through interactions we can lower her anxiety levels about engaging with people so that it becomes more enjoyable. Okay. What about the scrolling names? We can play a similar game with the scrolling names on the TV. So she watches them through once, and we say, stop! And we wait, and who knows, maybe she's standing back there going, ah, ah. And I might say, ready, set, go! And push the play button. So I'm being very engaging. I have no doubt that a child who is highly motivated by that scrolling on the TV is going to be watching me like this while I am saying ready, set, go. Because not only am I being very engaging and alluring, but the child knows that I have the power to push the play button. She just doesn't know when I'm going to do it. And that can become a really fun game too. And eventually, a child who's nonverbal, this is one of the ways that they become verbal the fastest. The situation in which they're most likely to become verbal is when they want to access something that they really find highly preferable. So then, oh, and I wanted to say on this one, movies aren't, of course, TV, video games, those kind of things, they are naturally unengaging on a social level. Our kids tend to like them much, much more because they don't require any social involvement, and social involvement is where they're having the problem. So while I wouldn't recommend that children most of the time just sit around and watch TV or watch movies or watch the credits play over and over, that's not a super healthy developmental activity. But if that is all your child is interested in, then we're going to use that to help their engagement skills grow. And if this little girl, all she wants to do is watch those videos scroll, and I did have this student that I was telling you about that was her preferred activity, and she would have done that all day long. She would have rewound it, watched them, rewound it, watched them. I mean, hours on end she would have done this. And eventually we got to the point where I could turn the TV off, but it took a long, long time. And so depending on how involved your child is in particular activities, you have to start with what your child's interests are. You can't all of a sudden assume, well, she's going to be done with movies. There's going to be no more movies. We're going to play blocks instead. If blocks is not engaging to your child, that's not going to be a helpful step to take. So what about Angelina Ballerina? Cue up the song, and once again, ready, set, dance. And then you do your little ballerina dance, and you do it until the song is done, and then you turn it off. And you wait until the next time that you say ready, set, dance. Make the stopping just as much fun as the dancing is, and make it all very engaging and fun, and use a playful tone of voice and lots of facial expressions because they draw people in. All these activities should be done as many times as possible before your child indicates that she is finished. So as long as she stays interested and she stays in the vicinity, you could keep playing these games. If she starts ramping up her frustration level and you can tell she's getting whiny or she's trying to hit you or something, this is no longer fun and it's no longer helpful. At that point you say, all done, and you give her a model of how to express that she's had too much. And then you let her have some time to herself again, because most of these kids need a little time to recuperate after they've been pushed a little bit. So once your child really enjoys these games, then it's time to move to step number 3. And step number 3 is playfully obstruct your child's preferred activities. So obstruction is getting in the way of and putting a little hurdle in between your child and the highly preferred item or activity that she wants. The goal is not to frustrate her, but to tempt her to interact with you more. We want her brain to connect the idea that people are fun, and people are helpful, and people are not bad, they are good. Right now, whether it's because people are overwhelming to her, or overwhelming to her sensory system, or because people are a mystery to her due to sensory delays, or social delays, she doesn't see people as an overall positive thing. But we can change that. So in step 2, some of those obstructions are introduced, like the blanket over the mirror, or pressing stop and making, waiting to say 3, 2, 1 until we started again. But you were solving the child's problem. So you were the advocate for the child, and you placed yourself on the child's team. In step number 3, we want the child to become her own advocate. And so you're going to have to take a step back and play dumb, act confused, pretend you do not know what she wants. So for example, let's start with the sink again. She should be used to playing in the sink after going potty now. But surprise her by, she goes potty, you wash hands, you turn the water off, dry your hands, turn the light off, and leave the room, or at least stand by the door. Now, if she's gotten used to playing with you in the sink after she goes potty, she's going to be a little confused. She might look at you. She might go, She might say, water. Those things are all engagement. So that is a success. And what you want to do is respond to those. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Silly mommy. Let's play in the water. Whee! And do your routine then. But you want those engagement moments to happen. If she just turns the water on herself, which a lot of children do, or turns the light and the water on, then you want to say, water on, or you want to model for her what she should say maybe the next time. With the mirror, put the blanket over the mirror and wait. Just wait. Because on this one, she already has a script, right? She already has 3, 2, 1, pull. So wait and look at her. With an expression of expectation. I am expecting that she is going to do something. I'm not just sitting there. I'm waiting with excitement. I cannot wait until she asks me to pull that off because I love dancing in the mirror. So you're waiting with expectation. If she doesn't do anything, you say 3, act as if you can't sit still in your chair or on the floor. You're so excited. 2. Put your hands on the blanket. Get ready. 1. Your eyes should be about to explode out of your head. Your eyebrows should be like way up in your hairline. You should be smiling so hard that your cheeks hurt. This is what it looks like to be feeding your child's engagement with the world. So, of course, you're hoping she's going to say 3, 2, 1, pull, or any bits of that. And that would be successful engagement. If she doesn't, keep it up until she does, and keep on backing off a little bit more each time to make it a little more difficult. So you can use similar tactics for the scrolling names on the video and the Angelina Ballerina song by just adjusting your expectations a little bit. And what I mean by adjusting your expectations is that at first your child might just look at you with anticipation before you pull the blanket off. And then you might wait until your child actually says a word or makes a noise before you pull the blanket off. And then you might wait until she says 2 out of the 3 numbers before you turn the blanket off. Like you say 3 and she says 2, 1, pull, like that. So just keep making the task slightly more complex so it's still very fun and playful, but so that it is increasing the requirements on her just a little bit. So here are some questions to ask yourself about your work to interact better with your child. I have a link down below to Dr. Greenspan and Dr. Wider's book that will discuss all of these things, so you can check that out if you'd like. There will be a link down there. But question number 1, am I working within an activity that's enjoyable to my child? We can't learn if we're not engaged, but we're not very likely to be engaged in things that are not fun. So assume that what your child is doing serves a purpose and make it more complicated. Number 2, am I enticing my child to take the initiative? Just doing things for your child, like she reaches for something, you give it to her, that isn't creating a successful social interaction. We need to make it more complex. So if she raises her hands indicating that she wants you to pick her up, just picking her up isn't the social interaction. What's the social interaction is you saying, I don't know what you want. What do you want? Up or drink? And then she will respond, at least that's the goal, and tell you whether it's up or drink. And I think you already know. Number 3, do my voice, gestures, and facial expressions show expectation? Am I expecting her to respond? Number 4, am I tailoring the interactions to my child's nervous system? So pretend your child is feeding off of you. So if your child runs really high, for example, she's very hyper, probably kind of stiff and very energetic, probably has a voice that's too loud for the situation, then you're going to start off being a little over loud, a little over energetic, and slowly ramp it down, bringing your child along with you. Pretend that what you are, your child is sucking from you, which is not necessarily so far from the truth. If your child's really kind of floppy and droopy and low energy and usually body-wise they're droopy too and a little too quiet for the situation, then you need to start out quiet so as not to shock her, but ramp it up. Turn up your volume, turn up your movements, be more energetic, and then her body will follow yours. Number 5, am I involving as many senses as possible? So think about sight, smell, touch, movement, all of those things that can help your child be more engaged in what you're doing. But keep in mind where your boundaries are. These are supposed to be fun interactions that entice your child. They're not meant to be frustrating. They're not meant to put your child over the edge into a meltdown. That would be sad, and that would not encourage her to interact with you more or to be more engaged with her world, because it kind of reiterates the issue that being involved with the world is unpleasant and stressful. So keep it just a little bit therapeutic by continuing to push slightly, but not so offensive to her that she falls apart and can't take it. I think that means I have reached the end of my little discussion for the day. I hope that it was very helpful to you and that you got some ideas about how to help your child be more engaged in the world around her and be more engaged with you, because that makes life a lot more pleasant for a family member. Please don't forget to subscribe up here in the upper right-hand corner of the video and leave questions below. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks. Bye.